Thank you for taking the time to watch this episode of Life Support. If you enjoy the content, we would ask that you like it, hit subscribe, and share it with your friends. Welcome to Life Support. So glad to have you. And this program, we tell stories. We love to talk about how Christ redeems and the different ways that he works in this world. And I have a great guest today to do that. His name is Ben Quie. And if you're from Minnesota, that name will probably sound familiar because his father is former Governor Al Quie. And Ben, thanks for being here. We're glad you're here just for you, not because you're the son of Al Quie. I just want to make that really clear.
I appreciate that.
Yeah. Well, we're very open-minded here.
He casts a big shadow.
Well, I bet he does. Yeah. And so talk about that a little bit because he was a highly respected man beyond just the political realm. And then you had to grow up kind of in the public eye, and then, your dad has these huge, almost like expectations for you to kind of be like your dad. Tell me what that was like.
Yeah, I tell people that growing up with my dad was kind of like growing up with a father who was a combination between John Wayne and Jesus.
Yeah.
There's a book about that's more different, but he was like, you take the two characteristics of those people, and it was like that was my dad, and it was a huge blessing to grow up with him as a father. And my mother, my father and mother both had a passion for seeing and serving and caring for people, everybody.
Right.
So I'm the youngest of five. My siblings were all born back on the farm. My dad was a farmer before he was in politics, so he's one of the few honest politicians. He felt a calling to go into politics, and none of the rest of us have ever had that call.
Mm-hmm. But that's a huge blessing. I mean, just to say, growing up with my father was a blessing. I mean, we all want our kids to say that to somebody, right, and feel that.
Yeah. And I've known and I cared deeply about many men who have grown up with no father or a very dysfunctional father. So I count my blessings all the time. And again, there's challenges for all of us. A challenge for me my dad was the kind of guy who overcame every challenge that ever came his way. So I grew up with stories of him when he was a kid, and he was terminally shy. I mean, believe it or not, he's this public speaker, and but as a child he was terminally shy. So he got himself over that and learned to speak. He joined the high school football team. He was afraid to get tackled, so he put a pile of hay in the barn and jump on the hay and then take away hay until he could throw himself. So I just had constant stories about all the things he overcame in life and in the Navy. And then you feel expectations that your dad has done great things, you need to do great things too. And education was a very big thing for them. So when I was in my 30s, this was about 32 years ago, I was going through a really difficult time in life. I was depressed, and I didn't know why, but my wife was worried about me. It was just hard to get up in the morning, and I needed to do something about it. So we went to a church called Church of the Open Door at the time, and they had a prayer ministry, prayer counseling they called it. So I went in and spoke with them, and they intuitively knew to ask me about my father, because I told them I'm dealing with depression. I don't know why, but I just don't like myself. Mm-hmm. And so they asked me questions about what it was like growing up with Al Quie as my father, and I told them about the blessings, but also just the expectations, and just talked about how I felt for years like I was a disappointment. I didn't finish college. I was a carpenter, loved working with my hands, and he admired those things, but it was like I had expectations for myself.
Sure. Mm-hmm.
And the way we think about our God, our fathers, we oftentimes put that on God too. So our father is kind of an image of God in our lives. So, and I felt like I was a disappointment to God. And so in their conversation, that kind of came out. And so they said, well, let's go to prayer. And as we're praying, if anything comes to mind, and just speak it out. And so I closed my eyes, and immediately when I closed my eyes, all I could picture was our third son who had just been born, Cameron. And all I could see was his face. And they're praying and praying, and all of a sudden I just started weeping. And it wasn't words, but I just got this impression from the Lord is that the way you love Cameron is the way I love you. And he can't disappoint you. You love him because he's yours. And
Yeah.
And so it was just I've struggled with perception of people since then, but that was just this deep gift that God gave me that I don't need to achieve or perform to get His love.
Yeah.
That His love is.
That's a real issue for a lot of believers. That that idea that God loves us just as we are is really hard.
Yeah.
To embrace. I mean, we know it theologically,
Mm-hmm.
but to really not think God's pointing a finger at us and saying, I wish you would have, or why did you do that? Or
Right.
it's hard.
Right, it is.
Yeah.
And yet to feel that there's expectations of what we need to do for Him.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I've been learning through the last several years. It's not about what we do for God, it's about what we do with God and developing a relationship where we can listen to what He's inviting us into.
Because that's what He wants.
Yeah.
He wants to have a relationship with us.
Right, yeah.
You mentioned, it was a blessing to grow up with your father. Your father was a strong believer and acted it out.
Mm-hmm.
And we were just you were telling some stories about Chuck Colson and the whole Watergate thing and the beginning of Prison Fellowship. Tell me how your dad was involved with that and some of the unique things that kind of happened in that process. Because
Sure.
you're involved now with that.
Yeah,
With Prison Fellowship, yeah.
Yeah. So when my dad was in Congress, he had there was a fellowship group that met for prayer. I don't remember how often they met.
That's a news flash, by the way, that you just said, that congressmen pray.
These were congressmen and senators that were on both sides of the aisle that were on this
They
group.
actually talked to each other
They
then.
did, the Democrats and Republicans.
Amazing.
And so one of the men who led that group, Doug Coe, wasn't in Congress, but he had influence and relationships with people in power and developing prayer groups like this and stuff. So, Colson, of course, he was known as Nixon's hatchet man, and he didn't have a lot of respect from people who had character.
Yeah.
But anyway, so Colson had come to know the Lord and been brought into this fellowship group, and so that's where my dad started meeting with Chuck, and they prayed together, and so Chuck was eventually sentenced to prison for his what he did in the Watergate era with Nixon's administration. And so while Chuck was in prison, my dad would visit him. And so my dad found out that one of his sons was having addiction problems and dealing with drugs. And my dad really felt like Chuck needed to be home with his son. He shouldn't be in prison. So my dad did research about this, unbeknownst, I think, to all of our family, but that you can serve somebody's prison sentence. So my dad went to Chuck and said, I learned that I can serve the rest of your prison sentence so you can be home with your family. And Chuck said, no, you can't do that. But it had a profound impact of Chuck seeing in a real living way the love of Christ exemplified through a brother in Christ. So,
yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
That's powerful. That's like a mirror of the gospel, like Jesus coming to us and saying, hey, I'll take all that sin.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I'll pay that for you.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, I don't know what would have happened if Chuck said yes, but
well, now that that's a public story, I'm going to have to steal that for a sermon because that's an illustration that you can't just walk past.
Yeah, it's
pretty amazing.
It's in Chuck's book, Born Again. But
okay.
Yeah. So after my dad finished his term as governor, he actually served as a area director, and then eventually was president of Prison Fellowship for quite a while, and had a big impact on Prison Fellowship, and had, even after he wasn't involved in the organization, was trying to encourage them to not be so centralized, but kind of like he was in politics.
Right.
But so anyway, so I learned a lot about prison fellowship through him. But I was actually invited to volunteer through another friend at church.
And that's how you got involved?
Yeah.
So tell me about that. A lot of people are afraid to take that first step to be involved with the different organizations that work in prisons and jails. Tell me about that experience for you. What was it like to dive into that and to do what you're doing right now?
Yeah, it probably wasn't as intimidating for me because I just heard stories from my dad of the relationships that he developed with men in prison. But the man that invited me was a guy from our church, Open Door, who had a group that went in on Tuesday nights as part of prison fellowship. It was a fathering program, so helping men deal with issues with their fathers and how to be a good father and how to be a father from prison. So that was, but at first the things that came through my mind were like, I don't have anything in common with these guys. What am I going to talk about with them?
Yeah, they're going to look across the table at you like, what are you doing here? Like, how are you going to help me?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, I can see that.
Right. But one thing, one thing that I've learned soon after coming was, I think people had the impression that we're bringing Christ into prison, but in all reality, we meet Christ in prison, and in the relationships with these men, and the most profound effect that it has had on me is really challenging labels that we have for people. So I've got dear friends who've got some of the worst labels there are. People judge people by their labels, and we all hear labels, and there's all kinds of labels that we have that we use for people, liberal, conservative, and when you've got the label murderer, most people take that as like, okay, there's no hope for that person. But I've learned through my relationships with these men to learn that there's always a story behind that label, and to not judge people by those labels. Early on, I had a man in our small group who he was in for molesting 3 of his children, and that's a crime that when you're in prison, that's the lowest of the low. So you don't tell people in prison that you've done that because they're no respect. But
yeah,
and so and it's the kind of thing that before I got involved, as you hear about somebody like that, it's hard to have compassion for somebody like that.
Yeah.
But in having him in small group and listening to what it was like for him to grow up, and his dad left when he was a small child. His mom brought in these men that she would bring into his house would molest him. And it's not an excuse for what he did, but it helps us.
It helps you understand.
It helps us understand how somebody could come to do something like that.
Yeah.
So it's helped me to really embrace what I believe is that people aren't good or bad. People are on a spectrum of well and unwell. So it's hard to have compassion for somebody who you see as bad, but it's a lot easier to have compassion and love for somebody who you see as unwell. And we've all got areas that we're unwell in our lives.
Well, sin's a problem for everybody.
Yeah.
And so if you see that person as just another kind of pilgrim who's dealing with the sin problem, that kind of changes your whole perspective.
It does.
Because I think I've had people walk up to me in church and unwilling to really accept the fact that somebody did something really bad, but they would never do that, and how could you talk about them or be their friend or whatever. And I look at them like, wow, like where did you lose touch with the reality that we're born sinners? Like, how did that theology escape you?
Right.
But that's kind of how the evangelical church operates. It's kind of like this tier thing. Like, we're kind of these conservative evangelicals, and we've got it. And anybody who doesn't agree with us is kind of like, well, good luck. Maybe God can touch them, but I'm not going to.
Right.
You know?
Right.
So that's really important what you said about labels, because I think
Yeah.
we live on labels these days.
We do, and it's caused me to try to. I mean, I'm not perfect at this, but I try to catch myself when I use a label for somebody, but I mean, what you're saying, Psalm 139 is by far my favorite, and I've read it through the years, and for a long time that section at the end where David is railing against the enemies of God and just talking about how he hates them,
Yeah.
and he wants them to die, and I
Yeah.
would always skip over that. And then I was realizing one day is that what he did, because following that is this beautiful prayer, Lord, search my heart, try me and see my anxious ways, show me I can't remember the exact way, but show me my hurtful ways and lead me in the way everlasting. And it's just this way of saying he detached himself from looking, first of all, hyper-focusing on something, but also saying things that aren't true. God doesn't hate those people, and God doesn't
Right.
want them to die.
Right.
And so again, turning that inward and say, God, show me where my sin is, show me where I'm hurting people, and help me to grow in that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you're doing your prison fellowship work, are inmates surprised that you're willing to receive them as they are?
Probably new guys to the volunteer program, and when we started, so I was at Lino Lakes for 10 years, and then we started the program at Stillwater, and we intentionally started the program with, I think there were 6 or 7 guys who had been walking with the Lord for a long time, and just developed a relationship with them so that they could see that they can trust us. Because guys in prison, they are used to people sometimes coming and have ulterior motives of why they want to be in the relationship. So it takes a while for them to learn and trust that we're not there to get anything out of this, and it's out of love, and that's anyway. I see it as a way that it's as beneficial to me as it is to them through these relationships. I've grown tremendously through.
Well, the way that we are fed by the media about what prisoners are like, I mean, I know what they're like because I saw Con Air with Nicolas Cage, so
Right.
I know exactly what prisoners are like. But I mean, that's the image that we're fed.
Oh yeah.
That every one of them are these guys with, they're walking around with knives in their pockets and they're killing everybody and they're all mean, But when you get to know them, like you do, you see them as just people, right? Maybe they did something that was bad and they're paying the price for it, but they're just people.
Yeah. And I mean, you and I, we go through life and the Lord teaches us and allows us to gain wisdom through the things that we experience. And that's one of the rich things about being in relationship with men who have gained wisdom and experience and learned from the Lord in ways that I could never comprehend. And to have love and respect for them and to see the power of God in healing and transforming lives. And again, men who have done horrible things understand the damage that they've caused.
Yeah.
But God is using and has used and is using in powerful ways, and the love that they have for each other and for other people is really palpable.
Yeah, it's amazing. My wife and I had a chance to speak at Faribault. We had a son that was murdered, and so we had that touch with the system from a victim standpoint. And after we spoke to them, there was a line of guys saying, how can we make it right with the people that we hurt? How do we, some of them couldn't write. They weren't allowed to contact the people, and so they understood what they had done. And what was really bothering them was, I don't know how to make it right with the people we hurt.
Yeah.
And that kind of flies against what a lot of people think is going on there.
Right. Yeah. And I mean, in all reality, they can't make it right.
Right. That's correct.
But but I've known a lot of men who got the restorative justice program started as Stillwater, and there's a deep desire to do what they can to be a healing force.
Yeah.
Rather than
restorative justice was fantastic for us, and I remember the man who ran it just looked at me one day and said, "Hey, I'm a pastor, but I haven't told anybody, so keep it secret." But he goes, "I know what you're trying to do," and so we were in contact with this man for a long time until he finished his parole, and then he can't contact us, and so I'm not sure where he is now. But that's a really good program, and it's really important because it gives at least the opportunity for some to develop a dialogue. And he would always say, like, "Why do you keep writing to me? Why do you care?" And I tell him, because I'm a Christian and I follow Christ, and so why don't you follow Christ too? That kind of thing. And there's a lot of power in that.
Yeah, for sure.
Because the world doesn't usually operate that way, and through the power of God, we can be different.
Mm-hmm.
So you being there with them is really important. What's the one thing you've learned? I know there's a lot of things, but one main thing you've learned through this time of working with Prison Fellowship, about what have you learned about God by doing that?
I think, again, the labels is a big thing, but just the love of God for everyone, and that there's no one that's beyond redemption, and the power of God's love, Christ's love in people's lives. It's been amazing to see, and to watch men's journey. I mean, we all have a journey to go on, and we have ups and downs, and to not judge men because of the way they go through their journey, but to walk with them and learning the unconditional love of God, and to be, as much as possible, that unconditional loving presence in men's life.
As an ambassador for God, in a way.
Yeah. It's so often people have this image of, I need to go in and teach the Bible and teach Christianity, but I think our call is to be the love of Christ in relationship, and to be willing to listen to His leading in that, and what He has for us in these relationships, and how He wants us. Well,
that's when Jesus was asked, what's the greatest commandment, and He said, well, love God. And then you can almost see, Jesus walking away and going and by the way, love your neighbor. And that one is tough, but it's the command.
It is. And the thing that's impacted me about that command is that it's not just love your neighbor, it's love your neighbor as yourself.
Yep.
And I've thought a lot about that, and as a Norwegian, it's that that loving yourself is a hard
true
a hard thing. A Norwegian Lutheran is like, okay, we're not
you're really in trouble.
But it's like, why did he not just say love your neighbor, but he said love your neighbor as yourself? And I really believe that as we come to love ourselves and the identity that we have in Christ, and see ourselves as the beloved of Christ, and then out of that to see everybody else as having that same love and loving people as that way, it's a much more enriching and giving, loving of others, rather than I'm loving you because I'm commanded to love you.
That's right. Yeah. Well, Ben Quie, thanks for all you're doing. Thanks for continuing to carry the torch for the gospel. Thanks for stopping by and telling your story. We appreciate it very much.
Thanks for having me.
And thank you for listening to Life Support.